I don't want to spend $8 on like a line of ice cream, but like, yo, they went to jail fighting for people that they don't have to give a fuck about. Like, they are rich. And yo, it's cool. Like, honestly.
Everyone for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. Take two, because my audio recorder was on the fritz. I am super excited to be doing some FaceTime with Neriah from the band Prime, Louisville Straight Edge. Thanks so much for sitting down with me today.
Thank you for having me.
And Neriah has been cool enough to do this on his lunch break, so we're gonna, I don't know the length of this podcast, but we're just gonna kind of cut to the chase. As far as you were mentioning things as far as getting into music kind of before I realized that we were having some issues, but can you just quickly kind of do the Cole's notes again of how you at least got into music and how you got into hardcore overall?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like my parents were really into music, and then I started going to a high school that was like, it was like really small. But me and my friends all kind of like gravitated towards, like, my friends specifically like gravitated towards like mall metal and like Hot Topic, like metalcore and things like that. And so like,
right.
So I was also into that, but I was really into punk and stuff coming up. So like like early punk, Ramones, Clash, like that kind of like punk before DC punk. And my friend basically like saw that, and he was like, "Oh, well, like if you're into this stuff, like let me take you to shows and stuff." And he started taking me to like hardcore shows. And I remember he gave me a copy of "Songs to Scream at the Sun" by Have Heart, and was like, "You'll probably be into this." And that's like the record that like to this day I quote as like making me straight edge. Like, I just remember hearing it and being like, I want to do whatever these guys tell me.
Right.
And so yeah, and since then it just never stopped. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of my friends from high school like went on, got like jobs, moved, all that shit. But like, I just like never like stopped with hardcore. Like, that was like it for me. It was all I ever wanted to do.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing to realize on how some people can be so in and out when it comes to this genre of music over like as an umbrella term. But for me, there's no like expiry date or like idea of like, yeah, I'll probably not be, listening to bands and going to shows and playing shows. Like, we mentioned before, we initially met at Snow and Flurry Fest in Minneapolis back in November. And, there was a couple bands like Advent or Relentless or Empire Down even. They're just like, they're older dudes. They had their kids on the side of the stage and, fist bumping their dad in between songs. So, that might be you or I in the next 10, 15 years or so.
That's the goal, honestly. I will do this as long as my body lets me, pretty much.
Right. Yeah. So, we were mentioning kind of before we were recording, the point of where you are geographically speaking in Louisville, Kentucky, and then, where we first met being in Minneapolis. Those are two key cities as far as, I guess, very sad stories of people losing their lives to police brutality. Those people being George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And I would love to maybe dive in and talk about, what's going on in those cities. Like, geographically speaking, I'm sure that you can speak maybe better to what's happening in Louisville, like on the ground. But Minneapolis is, a drive away for you. So, tell me about like just overall kind of what's going through your mind during this time, especially being in Louisville and having a lot of these events hit really close to home for you.
Yeah. I mean, my first thought, like, it's like obviously like super tragic and like, man, I hate the police, honestly. But like I have been truly blown away in Louisville, at least, that like how much the community has like like really rallied behind this. Breonna Taylor was killed by LMPD about, well, probably close to 2 months now.
Yeah.
And like her family tried to like bring it up and see what was happening and stuff like that, but there was no like immediate, like there was immediate action, but not to the level that it is now. And like just like watching what happened with George Floyd in Minneapolis and like that kind of stuff, I just feel like it really like it made us realize like, yo, we have to like take care of our business here. And so like honestly, I just stopped going out every night, being like frontline protesting like a couple nights ago because my body was shot.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I've been out every night. A lot of Louisville hardcore has been out in droves like every single night, and like it's just been like really great to see the community like rally behind something as like forcefully as they have. It really means a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's come up on a couple podcasts previous to this, but like, you know, getting into hardcore like, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago for myself, like I mentioned this on the episode that came out just a couple days ago, but when I was getting into it and hearing like people say fuck the police in between songs and things like that, at first I was like, oh, like in my very white privilege attitude, I was like, oh, that's when you get like pulled over for speeding or something like that. But understanding that is like the tip of the iceberg versus the much larger issue at place here. And I think hardcore overall educates that pretty upfrontly, while it's kind of like becoming apparent to the rest of the world right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, you never really know how a community is going to like react until you're kind of just like thrown into it. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like everybody says fuck the police, but there are definitely probably like communities and like scenes and things like that, like in general across the US who aren't making like the moves, you know what I mean, to like back that up. And I'm just really glad that that's not the case here. Like it's just been like united front. Everybody's just down. It's been like really good because yeah, it is like it's a much bigger issue than just like, you know, when you get pulled over and you get a ticket and you're like pissed about it or like something like that. It's like there's like deep rooted stuff. And I'm one of like, there's like a few black people in Louisville hardcore, but not like a lot.
Right.
And you just never really know how people are going to react whenever it's like not technically like they're like fight to fight, you know? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've just been blown away by like my friends and the people who I have spent the last like 5 or 6 years of my life like with. I've been just blown away by like their support and everything. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like the things that, you know, people are realizing now, it's like there is a difference, you know, if we're going back to that, like being pulled over for speeding example, there is a difference if you're a white person versus if you're someone of color. There's already a preconceived agenda that's in place, or like notions of like treating people differently. So, you know, I think it's truly rewarding to see, like you said, the community come together, and, you know, big corporations, you know, I think I saw like Ben and Jerry's was like the huge text, like we must destroy white supremacy, and like lots of people are just putting out their PR statements, and you know, that's
Ben and Jerry's is the most like down, like they went to jail, like I'm like I will never they got locked up for protesting. Like that is like, that's like what I want to see from like people who have like the money and privilege to not give a fuck. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're just like, yo, like we're going to be fine, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's like what I like to see from people. You know what I mean? It makes me like, it makes me want to support them. Like, I don't want to spend $8 on like a pint of ice cream, but like, yo, they went to jail fighting for people that they don't have to give a fuck about. Like they are rich. And yo, it's cool. Like honestly.
Do you think you know, that was maybe a realization for them when they're actually put in the, not in the shoes necessarily, but like they were Because that's the thing that's really scary seeing now is that police they're treating everyone like it doesn't matter what skin tone they have. It's like you could be a 65-year-old man and get pushed by the police and then you're bleeding from your ears. But, you know, potentially them having to go to jail, like really like woke them up in a sense, like, oh, like this is a daily thing for so many Americans, Canadians.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like a wake up call for a lot of people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I went to jail. It's so funny. I went to jail, like 4 days after I got back from Snow and Flurry, actually.
Right. Yeah. You tweeted like, oh, it's a shame that Scope didn't post the Prime set from Snow and Flurry before I went to jail. I was like, wait, what's the story here? So I'm glad this is coming up.
I went to jail on like literally like expired tags and a missed court date. And I had just bought like a new car and everything, and literally I went to jail, got my car impounded and everything like that. Like literally as soon as I got back, and I just remember being like, damn, yo, this is like this. It just is what it is, honestly. Like I just, you know what I mean? There's really no getting away from it. I really like try to be like, or in the past, I've really tried to be like, oh man, like whatever, like being black, it's just who I am. But like, I don't know, like when I was younger, I was like, I don't know that it plays as much of a factor into things as like maybe people older than me think and things like that. And then like sitting in jail, I'm like, damn, yo, I probably would have walked away from that if I had been white. I probably would have just gotten another ticket.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's super eye-opening, like seeing the comparisons of like people getting far worse sentences and then showing like, here's a white dude, a racist white dude who like, you know, shot people and killed people, and he got a much smaller sentence and got off early because of good behavior. I'm like, it's absolutely fucked that is happening on a far more regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, even now, the one of the officers who was present and arrested for George Floyd's death, he just got released on bail like yesterday, I think.
Yeah, I did see that, yeah.
It's so disheartening to see that the system just doesn't change. It doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like it's really disheartening. And I'm in like a group chat with a bunch of like black people that started because of all this stuff where we just check in on each other. And it's like, it's really, really hard to see just like, damn, is anything we're doing like actually matter? Like that dude like was chilling, watched someone die, did not stop his homie, spent 5 days in jail after they literally burned the city down.
Right.
Like literally burned the city down. And then they just crowdfunded his bail and he just got released. He's like just at home with like his kids and stuff like that. It's like, it's a fucking mess.
Yeah. It's truly just, and like, I don't think it would be right to say like nothing is changing. Like there are small things, but again, like the scale that the amount of people who are protesting, the amount of money that's being raised to make sure organizations can be supported is at a scale I don't think anyone in our lifetimes has ever seen. But slow changes, but seeing things like that definitely, make it feel like I took one step forward and then 2 steps backwards in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like it's just like, this is what we had to do to get this little bit. And then even then you like take that little bit back. Right. Like literally we've protested in Louisville like every single night, like thousands of people like marching the streets, caravanning in their cars, locking down intersections. You know what I mean? Like they've like stopped with the National Guard and stuff like that. But last week we were just going out and getting shot with pepper bullets and tear gas and stuff like that, just to like go home and do it again the next night. And they still haven't like arrested the killers who were responsible for Breonna Taylor's death. Mm-hmm. And then in Minneapolis, they're burning down precincts and things like that. They're literally like, they're like booing their mayor when he's like addressing people and like shouting him out of rooms and stuff. And like, we do all that and we get this little bit where they like arrest these killers and then they just like take that little bit back. They're like, well, he's like good, he can go. And it just shows how fucked the system is. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's like playing against the house. House always wins.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like a lot of people, it's very clear, like the hundreds of people that they've arrested in these protests is like, realistically, all you needed to do was arrest these 4 men and convict them. And that's it. Then like we probably wouldn't even be sitting here and having this conversation. But the fact that this stems so deep and there's so much corruption and things that are just, again, pushing that idea, and maybe in their minds, they're just trying to wait it out, should be the fuel for people who are protesting to kind of keep going. 'Cause, you know, we need to take care of ourselves. But you know, the fight needs to continue for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think we're stopping here anytime soon. Our mayor is a spineless coward, who's bought and paid for by the police. Shout out Greg Fisher. Fuck that guy. I don't know what I can say on here, by the way. Can I like just like say whatever? Like
say whatever you want.
All right, cool. Just making sure.
Yeah.
Before I said something crazy and then you're like, yo, I have to like take that out later. But yeah, no, our mayor's a spineless coward. Our police are obviously as fucked as every police system is, and you know, nothing's gonna stop here until we see some results. Nothing's gonna change. Like, we'll be in the streets every night. So it just is what it is.
To kind of shift gears here a little bit, Neriah, you know, you were mentioning the Louisville hardcore scene and how there's not as many black folk who are going to shows and playing in bands and whatnot. And, you know, that's been eye-opening to actually like realize it's like, I'm trying to curate like all black musicians, or like even if it's just one person in a band, like a playlist. And, you know, there's, you know, people that I'm, you know, reaching out to get some insights, but it's very slim pickings versus the surplus of white dude in bands. So tell me, and something else that I'm noticing, and I don't mean to ramble here, but something that I've learned in the last couple of weeks is that a lot of people of color, or black people specifically, realize that they're the only person of that color in the room when they, you know, go to a show or go to a restaurant or whatever it is. So can you just kind of talk about that experience for you when it comes to hardcore, and kind of what goes through your mind when you see that?
I mean, so I'm in, like, Louisville is its own city and it's really cool, but like I am in Kentucky, which is still part of the South, quote unquote. So like, honestly, I never really thought, or I personally, when I was like younger, started going to shows and things like that, it was never like a thought in my mind about being the only black person or being like one of the only black people or things like that. Like, it was never really a thought to me because I didn't give a fuck. We were all just there to just like, we were all there. It's like hard to explain to someone who doesn't like get hardcore. Like, I've tried to explain like my mom and dad before, but like we're all there for such a like singular purpose that we're looking for some like outlet or some like relief or some self-expression of some type that I really don't even notice. My mom was actually, by the way, I'm like biracial. My dad is Mexican and my mom is black. Gotcha. So my dad just grew up in Texas and he hung out with everyone. It didn't really matter. So he never had any like notions about like white people. Like he's like, he claims that he was one of the first like Hispanics or Mexicans in the state of Kentucky because he came here from the army. Yeah. But like, so like I never really thought about it because my dad was just like, yo, like I look strange anywhere I go. So what's it matter? But my mom was always the one who was like, especially even now, like I still go on tours and stuff. My mom's like, you're just going on these tours with all these white people, like you're just the only one. I'm like, yeah, it's whatever. But we've got since I started coming to shows, I've like seen some people like come and go and things like that. And my friend Robbie, who like played bass in my old band Crossed Off, they fronted the band Nesh for a while. They're a black person, and you know we've had like a few and stuff like that. But like I said, like we're in Kentucky, so it's kind of just like a thing anyway, you know?
Right.
Like it's kind of just like there's not a ton of black people around to like convince to come out, and also when you get them out, it's hard to convince them to stay because it's like them and 60 white people, and like it's like just like this constant like struggle of making people feel like it's not like a setup or something. Like I don't really know how to explain it, you know?
Yeah, that's like they think that there is some kind of like they're walking into a trap in a sense just because there is a sea of Caucasity, yeah. I guess, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, my mom has said that to me all the time. She's like, how do you know you're not going to get somewhere and they're just going to jump you? Like, you're the only black person. But like, once again, I'm lucky that hasn't been the case. Everybody has been really cool. No one's even like, that's not even like a thought to me,
right? As
far as like the scene here, you know what I mean? But it's definitely a thing that I wish we could find a way to reach out. But once again, like hardcore is so weird because people are going to come and they might stick around for 6 months and then they might leave. And that's like white or black people. And like, there's no way to tell who's going to just be like a lifer in this. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, you just kind of take what you get, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, we talked about this on the podcast before, but you know, the fact that, you know, this is on everyone's lips right now, there's naturally going to be some people who have like, so-and-so said this on this date or in this context or whatever it is. So there's been some cancellation, and I think everyone's got different opinions on cancel culture, but I think the main thing for this is like, even if someone said something like 5 years ago, I think it's a better move to like hold that person accountable and like give them a quote, like for lack of a better term, a timeout of like playing in bands or being in hardcore or whatever it is, to allow people of color, whatever they are, to show that there's no tolerance for that, in any, you know, in any setting.
Yeah. So I'm a fan of that in situations that aren't like right now. Okay. It's like really tense out right now, obviously, because like once one thing happens, like everything kind of goes with it. You know what I mean? Like one police officer goes down and then they're just like, yo, let's just overhaul the whole system. And you're flooded with all these like people and things that people have said, things that people have done that are fucked up. Like you're like flooded with this like overhaul, which is like inherently a good thing. But in the situation we're in right now, it is literally, and I like said a bunch of this on Twitter last night, but that doesn't mean anything. It is inherently us, the people, versus the system right now. Like that is like the battle, and it's getting to this point where it's like we're like at war with the system. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so like I said it yesterday online. I don't know when this is going to come out, so you can go back and look and shit. I don't give a fuck who said what in 2015. I don't care that like so-and-so did these things that were fucked up in like 2012 and now we're holding them accountable. Like I give a fuck about like bodies on the front line with me who are there to get this thing done. You know what I mean? Like what you did in the past, we can approach later and we can say like, hey, like that was fucked up what you did. Like you need to be held accountable for that. But like right now it's like, for lack of a better term, like wartime. And there are people that I truly, truly like can't stand, that I despise, that if I heard they fucking fell off the face of the earth tomorrow, I would be like, good riddance. And those people are frontlining down the street from me, standing face to face, getting tear gassed, like getting shot with like pepper bullets and things like that. And for right now, those people are like, those are my people. Those are my allies. Like,
yeah.
And, like.
So in a sense of like, you feel like some of those things are, like you said, like it's good that maybe the truth is coming out, but this is not the time that like we should get distracted.
It's just not the time. Like I don't have time to flip through and find out what someone that I toured with at one point said in 2015. I don't have time for that. Like, are you going to stand and say Black Lives Matter right now? Are you going to donate money? Are you going to be about the cause? Because if you are right now, let's fucking go. Like we got things to do. You know what I mean? Like we can deal with your attitude or your issues later on. Just we need bodies right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. And I appreciate you bringing that up because like, I think being on not even just the outside of being white, but also just being up here in Canada, being removed from like a big hotspot like Louisville, that should be the mindset, like to, make sure that you, stay sharp when it comes to information, when it comes to like, things. I know like there was all those issues when people were posting like that black square. I don't like that was something that a lot of people, I guess, in myself included, at first I was like, okay, I guess this is an easy thing to like maybe help, but then quickly realizing once I actually like dove into it, I was like, oh, this is actually doing more harm than good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like most people like obviously like walked into something like that with like, and I feel like a lot of people just walk into most things with like good intentions,
right?
But obviously it's like what's behind it, you know what I mean? Like, and yeah, like the spread of information is like the most important thing. And like something like those black squares, like that was like, it's like fucked because people are hashtagging Black Lives Matter and it's just this black square with no information, but you have protesters and things like that who like need to know what the next move is and stuff. And yeah, it just gets you have to stay sharp on that stuff. That's all I can really say, is that you just have to be wary of false information, be wary of people trying to like derail the conversation, even if they mean it. I feel like it's all the same thing, like posting those black squares, posting someone who said the N-word in 2015. Like, I feel like it's like a good intention thing that right now doesn't need to be a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just keep your information right, get the people around you right, and roll out. Like we got shit to do.
Right. Yeah. And you please let me know when you got to bounce to go back.
I probably got another like 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, I think it's so crucial to, not get bogged down of like, I didn't share anything today that's helping this cause. Like, I think it's important to take time to like, consume stuff, give yourself breaks, but also like, stay sharp, because you can get tricked on certain things pretty easily if if you're going too fast.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and like with the internet now, obviously, like you just streams of information like
right
all the time coming at you. So yeah, you really have to like sit, fact check things, and make sure that you're reading from the correct sources and stuff. And it's tiring, man. Like honestly, like it's a full-time job to just stay up and relevant all the time. But straight up, like it's just what has to be done right now.
Yeah, and I talked about it with Jordan from Karma. We were just chatting about like how different this whole time would be if the coronavirus wasn't in the mix of all of it. Like, and he brought up an interesting point where he was like, I think there would be more ways that people can raise money. I'm sure there'd be a surplus of shows being thrown together for people to raise money and things like that, but maybe the turnouts wouldn't be as huge because like people would be at work, and some people might be like, fuck you boss, I'm going to this protest at 3 p.m. but there's a lot more free time, I guess. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I just I I personally feel like it kind of like added like fuel to it, because like here in Louisville, like we were like, our state has been one of the top like followers of the guidelines and stuff like that around the virus and stuff like that, and like Minneapolis has too. And I feel like part of the rage, at least for me and a lot of things I've seen, part of the rage is just like, yo, we're not even supposed to be like outside right now, yet you all still find a way to like kill people. Like, how the fuck is that even a thing? Like,
Right.
none of us are supposed to be out. Everybody's supposed to be at home, just like cooking, like going to the grocery store, and you literally like absolutely have to. Like, no one's supposed to be doing shit, and the police are still out harassing people and things like that. And to me, that added like a fuel to me, because I'm like, what the fuck are you doing outside? Like, just
Right.
go home.
Yeah.
And I feel like the protests, I mean, at least in my friend group and stuff like that, a lot of us just started going back to work or haven't started going back to work yet. And so it's just like allowed people the ability to just be out every single day. Like, what the fuck else is there to do? Restaurants are closed. There's nowhere to go but Kroger or the protests. That's like it.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So-
as far as you know, I know maybe something that you can like educate people who are listening or watching, as far as I like, a lot of people have said like fuck the police, you know, 1312, all these things, but a lot of people have also brought up like defunding the police, and actually, you know, elaborating what defunding actually means, because you know, people are, you know, some people want that police budget to be zero. Realistically, it's probably not going to fully zero out. That's probably not the reality. But as far as like, there's been plenty of things in our society that have been gradually defunded over time. Things like education, healthcare. So, what do you think is like a misconception when it comes to the term defunding the police in your eyes?
I mean, personally, I just when I see people say defund the police, my thought is to take that number and move it to zero. Obviously, that's not that may not be a realistic goal, but the idea that a suit of riot gear for a police officer costs 5 times what it costs to fully equip a nurse who is dealing with coronavirus, yet somehow we have had the money to fund a cop with his riot gear and his tear gas and things like that, and his like fucking like all of his like weapons and ammunition and things like that. The fact that we have been able to fund them, yet we're not funneling our nurses and things like that. We're not funneling money into our schools, because the school to prison pipeline is like a real thing. You know what I mean? Like, there are kids who literally just like graduate high school and they stay in trouble through high school and things like that. As soon as they turn 18, it's just right to jail. You know what I mean? Because they made some mistakes and stuff. And like, we're not funding service workers to check on families. We're not funding these things. Like, $1 billion is a lot of dollars.
Yeah, bro.
And the idea that we can give billions to our police to play dress up, to play Call of Duty, to fucking run around and like stick around and shoot unarmed protesters, like, the fact that we can put that money into that and not into the things that make this country, or that would make this country like a great country, like, that's what I mean when I talk about defunding the police. I mean, take their money and put it into things that make the community stronger to where we don't need them.
Yeah, and I like the Call of Duty quote that you just brought up, like, reminded me of a podcast where they're like, man, all these cops and they're like, you know, decked out like loadouts, and just like, it's just truly like, what world are we living in where like people are peacefully protesting, like no one's causing a stir, and there's, people that are looking like they're on the front lines of like the Lord of the Rings movie, you know, like it's ridiculous to see that happening. As far as things like, you know, you were mentioning like the idea is to create better communities so that we don't need the police. That's something that I've seen too, is just like the fact that, you know, like if we can invest in our communities and create jobs, like people who do turn to certain things that maybe the police are called on, whether it's like breaking into a house or whatever, those things will naturally go away because people will have work and won't have to, you know, figure out those things.
Yeah, that's definitely the point, is to just build the community up. Also, the police are like known for taking people outside, for hiring people outside of a community, and then they're expected to police a community with no knowledge of it all. They purposefully do that. That's another thing, that if you're not going to take the police fund and move it to zero, move it as close to zero as possible, and train people that have grown up and lived in communities and put them in the communities that they're from.
Right.
There's like an understanding there of like what goes down, what can happen, who did what. Like there's like an understanding of things there that the police try to avoid by putting people in power who don't know shit about the community that they're policing.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of issues come in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, you know, TV or movies will like portray police as like the person walking down and like waving at the kids and being like, oh yeah, I walk the streets every day. Like, you know, like I can't even recall the last time I've seen like a police officer just casually walking or doing rounds of that. It's mainly just being in a cruiser and, you know, like being a snake, honestly. Like,
yeah, for sure. Just lights off, sitting in an alleyway, waiting for someone to do something so they can jump in and play like their little like power game. I have nothing good to say about police. So
yeah. Well, this podcast is definitely not one to portray them in a good light. But to shift gears a little bit, because I know we got to wrap up here soon. You do vocals in a band from Louisville called Prime, and straight edge band. You know, we were mentioning Snow and Flurry is where we met, and you guys had still to this day have the shortest set on our channel. Can you talk to me? I don't know if the name of the new EP, Killing the Community, is tied to themes of what's going on in the world, but can you talk to me about, I guess, like how you've taken influence from things in your life, you know, present and past, and put that into some of the songs?
Yeah, it's so I named it Killing the Community. We recorded the album back in, I think we started in December and we finished in January or something. We wrote the record and recorded it, and I told them probably around the time of LDB in Louisville, like around February, I told everybody like, yo, I'm calling it Killing the Community. I had like personal issues go on where basically like I got asked to leave my parents' church for being in a queer relationship. I was like the worship leader or whatever, and I had gotten asked to step down by like some of the members there because they just like felt away, which is whatever. Like once again, we're in the South, like things fucking happen. But I told them like, yo, I'm calling it Killing the Community because it was like just about the idea of like loving something so much and then it just like fucking stabbing you in the back. And so that was like the initial thing. And I tried to make a point on the album that I was like, I had been in a band called Cross Off, and all of those songs were about like just struggling as like a black man. You know what I mean? Like all our record, Keep It Together, that came out 2 years ago now, like is literally just like chock full of like learning how to like love yourself as like a brown person, learning how to like be like a person and move through life and stuff like that. So I tried to make a point to like write this new Prime record where it was just about like me as a person, not like me as like a brown person or black person.
Yeah.
But honestly, like you just kind of forget once again that like that is like the way you're viewed by people is like a big part of how you're viewed yourself. And the way I'm viewed by a lot of people is that I'm just like a big black guy. So and I drive like a black tinted out Cadillac. And so like the way I'm like viewed by people is that I like as a threat. And so I tried to make a point to not write about like the black struggle or anything like that. But like after February, coronavirus hit, and I was like, wow, killing the community has this like other meaning now because like black people are contracting coronavirus at like a higher rate because they don't have access to healthcare and things like that, like white people do.
Right.
And then all this shit went down with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and David McCady or McAtee. Over that was a guy who the National Guard killed here during the protests.
Yeah.
All that stuff went down, and I was like, fuck, like this record is literally just like a record about just like being black again and like all these like mental health struggles that come with just like existing in the skin, in your skin, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really crazy to hear on how much it evolved even just in a few months, and how, you know, like especially like I know a lot of people are like resharing like that Jesus Peace song where it's talking about like the revolution has begun and all those kind of things. So it's kind of a weird serendipitous thing to see things take a new light for things to come back around. As far as the details on that release, can you talk to me? Like, you guys have put it out on Bandcamp, I'm pretty sure.
So the record was supposed to come out on May 29th. May 28th, I turned 24, and that was like the first day of the protest there.
Right.
And of the protest here anyway. Minneapolis had started a little bit before, but it was the first day of the protest here. And literally, like, it's supposed to come out on the 29th, and the 28th we're in the streets protesting, and they're like, it was like insane. Like they were like trying to flip over like one of the like cop like wagons that they use to like bring people, and someone like open fired into like the crowd of protesters with like live rounds, like some like right wing like fucking hick like piece of shit like shut off and like tried to shoot into the crowd and start shit. And yeah, it just it didn't feel right to put it out, and so we like waited, and we were like, we'll just wait, we'll just put it out some other time, like whatever, like there's no rush on it. But I had forgotten that I had like submitted it to No Echo for them to release it and everything. So No Echo still did the write-up and put the record out, and it came out like the next Friday, I think, like June 6th or 7th. And it came out, and I was texting Jake and Olivia. They run Badmouth. They're in that band Gadget. But they're putting the tapes out, and I was texting them. I was like, I guess we'll push the record today. And none of us really wanted to do it. So basically we were just like, well, it'll just stay up, and the people who find it, find it. And when we decide that now is the time to like push a record, then we'll push the record. So you can find it if you go on No Echo. It won't be up on streaming services. I don't know when this episode's coming out, so it might be, but for right now, it's like not up on any streaming services or anything like that. Like, it's just kind of out for people to hear as is. But yeah, we didn't really feel comfortable like with such a massive movement going on, trying to like push a record about, even if it is like tied to that movement or like has themes to do with it. And so yeah, we just all kind of felt like, yo, like this is something way bigger than like hardcore right now. Like this is like the world, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, you know, you mentioning that point earlier is like, there's stuff to do. Let's not get distracted with like or pulling hairs on certain things. But I am personally excited to hear that record. And I think I was messaging Nick about it, and I'm like, oh, I want to put it on the playlist, and he's like, oh, we're tied up. So whenever that comes up, we'll definitely be pushing it. Definitely a band that is doing some good stuff, especially in the straight edge community as well. Neriah, before we kind of finally go here, is there anything else that you want to say? Anything you want to plug, or any final tidbits before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, if I can just like say some like wild shit for a second, and you don't care.
Yeah, sure.
Yo, it's straight up like, if you support the police, if they're your friends, like if like someone that you're related to like is a cop or anything like that, like I mean it when I say like fuck all of them. Like there isn't like a good cop, there is no good officer. As soon as you put your badge on and like your blue dickies or whatever the fuck you put on, like as soon as you put that bullshit on and you go out, you are enforcing laws for corporations and for beings that are far more powerful than us normal people, and you are a fucking scumbag. Also, I want to say I've seen a lot of like things online this week about like black people who are police or black people who don't align themselves with the Black Lives Matter movement or things like that. There's been like a lot of that going on. I just want to say like, I can't think of that band specifically. Oh, that band like Bad Wolves or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who like thinks like that as a black or brown person, like you are a fucking like traitor to your community, and no one respects you. Like the white people that you're caping for don't respect you, and now you've lost the ability to even look back at your like brothers and sisters of color and look for their respect. Like no one respects you. And yeah, just fuck Greg Fisher, our mayor. Andy Bashir is our governor. He's not doing shit right now. Fuck him. Fuck Mitch McConnell, our senator or whatever. Like, yeah, I might be on like a watch list or some shit after this shit comes out, but
let's hope not. But I truly think that, you know, the time is crucial for being active online in the streets, donating. But I really hope that these realizations really push people to get out into the polls and vote for people of these powers that have always been able to stay in office. Let's get them out. Let's get some good moral people in office fighting for all races.
sure.
But specifically the ones that are oppressed. So, Neriah, how do people keep up with Prime, you on social media? Any tags that I can put at the end here?
I think the Prime Instagram is like Prime 502XXX or something like that. That's the best way. I don't even know my fucking handles or anything right now. I'll be honest with you.
It'll be below here, and it'll be in the show notes if you're listening to it. But Neriah, I really
just follow my back. That's like the important thing.
Yeah. But Neriah, I really appreciate you giving me some time out of your day. I know you got to get back to work here, so again, I really appreciate you chatting with me.
No, thanks for having me. It's been good. I hope I didn't scare anybody.
No, just education, which I appreciate.